It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. I'm Kusha Navidar, filling in for Brian. Now we'll talk about transportation. In one Brooklyn neighborhood, there's a new pilot program asking car owners to move their vehicles fewer times per week. Here's the idea. If alternate side parking happens less, drivers might comply more, and maybe it'll be easier for street sweepers to sweep the streets. We'll talk to WNYC and Gothamist transportation reporter Stephen Nessen about where it's happening and whether it might be replicated in other neighborhoods or even citywide. We'll also talk about another story that Stephen's following, how Mayor Zohran Mamdani's plan to speed up city buses on Brooklyn's Flatbush Avenue may come at the expense of the borough's infamous dollar vans. And we'll get a postmortem on how local transit served the many World Cup tourists in New York City and New Jersey. Let's dive in with Stephen Nessen, transportation reporter for the WNYC and Gothamist newsroom. Stephen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Listeners, we can take some phone calls. You can ask Stephen a question about any of these transportation stories. Here's the number, 212-433-WNYC. That's 212-433-9692. Call or text us. Okay, so Stephen, you call alternate side parking a, quote, regular source of misery for many New York City car owners.
Yes.
Maybe an understatement. In one neighborhood in Brooklyn, things could get a little easier. What's happening?
Right. So in Prospect Heights, it's really just 9 blocks. This is a very, very small pilot, but basically running, if folks know, from Pacific Street to Lincoln Place and Vanderbilt Avenue to Washington or Grand Avenues. And so what they're going to do is this is one of those areas where each side of the street has 2 days of alternate side parking. So it's either something like, Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Friday. So Crystal Hudson, who's the city council member there, came up with the idea. I think she was petitioned by the community board. They want to try getting rid of the last day. So that last Thursday, Friday days, those will just be canceled. You won't have to move your car those days, only the first day. And the reason they want to try this is it's actually kind of contradictory in some ways. Like on the one hand, the block is so clean, the Department of Sanitation decided they don't really need it twice a week. Neighbors do a good enough job cleaning the streets. If there's debris, you have to clear a certain amount up to the curb. And alternatively, they also want to encourage people to move their cars during alternate side parking. So her thinking is 2 days a week is a lot to ask of people. Let's just do it once. And if I only make you do it once, will you do it? So it's sort of a test to see if folks are going to, get the treat of not having to move their car twice a week. But during that one day, you better move the car.
So on these 9 blocks, it's not necessarily super dirty, but it's more like an experiment to see. It's like a behavioral economics experiment. Can we get it maybe to be replicated in other places where it could actually make it cleaner? Am I getting that right?
That's right. That's right. And folks may recall during the COVID pandemic in 2020, Mayor de Blasio did the same thing for the whole city.
Oh.
Because they didn't want folks, going out. And that was the time of lockdown. So it was like, we don't want people going out to move their cars. Nobody's driving that much anyways. And that lasted for almost 2 years. And you may recall Mayor Adams taking office and having a massive rat problem and a litter problem and a trash problem. And I think some folks attributed that to the lack of street cleaning that was happening because folks weren't moving their cars twice a week for alternate side. So this pilot in Prospect Heights is very small, very preliminary, but the Department of Sanitation says if any community board wants to do this, they just need to send a petition to the Department of Sanitation.
I'm happy that you brought up the rats because I was going to ask about that a little later, but let's go to it now. Like you said, the change was reversed from de Blasio to Adams a couple years later. Rats were a factor in that move. Is that a risk here?
Well, I suppose it could be, but again, I think this neighborhood in Prospect Heights is relatively known for being pretty tidy. They're not going to do it in a neighborhood that Department of Sanitation deems needing more street cleaning.
The rats are very considerate there.
Yes, I suppose so.
I suppose.
Although residents may say otherwise.
Yeah, fair enough.
And they have. And, I went out to talk to drivers about this, and it was a really mixed reaction. Even some drivers said they weren't necessarily in favor of it because they like to see their neighborhood cleaned twice a week by the street sweeper.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not a unanimous slam dunk with drivers.
Got it.
And obviously people who don't own a car are like, hey, I want my street clean. I don't care how often you have to move your car. On the other hand, when people move their car, that does create its own pollution as well.
Sure.
Because people are just driving around, circling the block, looking for a spot.
Yeah, sure.
So, it's complicated.
We've got a caller, Gail in Jackson Heights. Hey, Gail, welcome to the show.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is I live in Jackson Heights, and I've been here for many years, 20 years, and they have changed the alternate side of the street parking rules in this neighborhood. Where I live, which is at an intersection, on my side of the street, I cannot park from 8:30 to 10 on Tuesday. Across the street, it's 8:30 to 10 on Monday, and behind me, across the avenue, it's from 9:30 to 11 on Wednesday, and across the street from that, it's 9:30 to 11 on Thursday. So there are 4 options very nearby. If you can time it properly, you can leave your car for a week. I have no idea how effective it's been, and as of now, people still do not move when a sweeper comes down the street. So perhaps that needs to be tweaked as well. And one other possibility, there's a neighborhood in Manhattan where the people who live there double park for the hour and a half that the sweeper comes by. They put their telephone number in their visible in their car, and then after the sweepers are completed, they move their car to the right side of the street, and they can leave it there for the day or whatever their rules are locally. But so there are several possibilities if people can adhere to some kind of structure.
Gail, thank you so much for that call and for that kind of like citywide perspective of Jackson Heights in Manhattan. There's another text here of somebody who says that it would not work in Midtown Manhattan where people throw trash on the street day and night. I guess thinking about what Gail was bringing up, thinking about what I'm reading here in the text, how replicable would this be citywide where it seems like every borough is its own situation?
Right, its own little city. Right?
Yes, yes.
I mean, I will say one thing Department of Sanitation had tried to do that they argue would be very effective is to put a camera on a street sweeper, and if your car is blocking their way, it will automatically issue a ticket. So there would be a lot more tickets issued, and if you follow economics, I think, for some folks that would be an incentive to move your car if you don't want to get ticketed. On the other hand, the tickets are relatively low enough that it's cheaper than putting your car in a garage. So they just swallow the ticket and deal with it. So it's a problem.
When street sweepers roll past you, it can be hard to decipher how they actually work. At the risk of this being a digression, how do they work?
Well, I'd have to bring in a sanitation reporter, Liam Quigley, to help really break it down. But, they've got those brushes, they spray water, they scoop up some debris and dirt to a certain extent. So obviously, like, I live in the city too, and I've seen them go by, and I'm like, it doesn't look that much cleaner afterward.
Right.
Our building has gotten a ticket as well because the street sweeper can't go because cars are blocking the way, and our building has to pay the ticket. In Prospect Heights, I think folks go out and actually clean the street themselves. And now I know you should be doing that as well if your street's not as clean as you'd like it to be, as it should be, actually.
There's a text here that says, I believe there will be an improvement in compliance initially, but after a while, people will have difficulty moving their car even once a week. This is just basic human behavior. Some of us are just resistant to following the rules. So I guess, there will be a whole spectrum of folks that do it. Or don't do it. We've got Susan in Morningside Heights. Susan, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you. I just want to point out during the pandemic, actually after the pandemic, the streets were up through the pandemic, I should say. The streets were way cleaner than when we had to move our cars all the time. And once people were coming back into the city from out of town, they were much messier with takeout food refuse and so on. So that's one thing. The other is there are already neighborhoods that have just once a week alternate side parking, including up in Adriano Espaillat's neighborhood. So I'd be curious to know how that was finessed. And it's just totally unnecessary to have it any more than once a week. As it is, the street sweepers are only coming around religiously about 25% of the time on the blocks that I have to park on.
Susan, thank you so much for that. I also want to go to Mac in Brooklyn, who has an idea from the 90s, right, Mac?
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks.
I want to bring back those yellow stickers that you couldn't get off without using a razor blade. I own a car. I'm saying this from a car owner's perspective. My wife and I live on a block where cars never move. It's constantly, there's a lot of construction around. And it's, we live in a society. Move your car. I own a car, you move it. Then your street gets clean. If you don't, you get one of those stickers. You got to get a razor blade and you got to deal with it.
Mac, thank you so much. Throwback to the 90s. You remember that, Stephen?
Yeah, no, actually, for a while, those stickers were banned. And just this year, the city council is allowing them to come back. So you may be seeing those pesky stickers again.
Oh, Mac, you might be on the same wavelength as some people at City Hall. Thanks so much.
It's coming back.
All right, let's go from parking to dollar vans versus Mayor Mamdani's Flatbush Avenue bus plan. So from street sweepers and alternate side parking, we're going to talk about the dollar vans. You, Stephen, have reported on Mayor Mamdani's plan to add dedicated bus lanes to long stretches of Flatbush Ave in Brooklyn. So you write, quote, "The unlicensed network of dollar vans that hustle up and down Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn is on a collision course with Mayor Zohran Mamdani's push to speed up bus service." How?
So the mayor is actually installing these they're called bus rapid transit routes. He's going to do 5 of them in the city to start with. And like you were describing, this is where the bus will actually go down the middle of the road. It's a radical redesign from buses being stuck behind taxis and cars and everyone else on the road to having its own dedicated lane that is not permitted for any other vehicle to be in. So the goal is to speed up buses by 20%. They say practically what that means for riders is, you would save 6 minutes on each bus trip that you take. Of course, Fordham Road is massive. It goes all the way from Kings Plaza to downtown Brooklyn, but they're going to do it on that route. I should say they're also going to do it at Utica. They're going to do it on Church Avenue, running from Kensington to JFK, also Northern Boulevard, Queens. But particularly we wanted to look at Flatbush Avenue because we know the Caribbean community there, a lot of folks there rely on dollar vans. And for those who don't know, a dollar van is basically the sort of unofficial shuttle that will pull over absolutely anywhere if you just put your hand out. And they used to cost $1. Now with inflation, they can cost up to $3. But I rode a few and typically it was $2. And they will pull over anywhere and they will drop you off anywhere along Flatbush Avenue. And riders say it really fills a gap where, a bus stop may not be there, or they just want something faster than the city buses because, quite frankly, the city buses are slow. And I did this story. I actually got some pushback. I won't say a lot of pushback, but some pushback, both from the city, who says, we're not trying to push anyone out of business. We're just trying to make buses faster. But on the other hand, dollar vans rely on zipping in and out of traffic quite skillfully.
Yes.
and going around a bus that is taking forever to load passengers. So that's sort of their appeal. So if the bus is faster than the dollar van, I think some folks would vote, with that. But to be fair, I was out riding the dollar vans, talking to riders, and they were like, even if the buses are faster, I still like the dollar van. It's a culture. It's part of the community.
Right.
The drivers come from places where they come from. And like I said, they will do a drop-off absolutely anywhere. So it's like your store is right there. You don't want to walk 4 blocks back. You want to get off in front of your store. Mm-hmm. So it sort of has that charm and appeal. Also, I got some pushback because I described them as illegal dollar vans because it is technically illegal to do a street hail like I described. Only yellow taxis are supposed to do that in the city. Mm-hmm. And there's only technically, from what the city told me, 63 licensed commuter vans. And the dollar vans that I saw were definitely not that. They had out-of-state plates. They were made up of this mishmash of unused university shuttles from Yale and random places like North Dakota, as well as senior home shuttle vans. These are all decommissioned buses from around the country.
Well, to your point, it sounds like it's a community finding a need and filling a need.
Totally.
So let's dive into the dollar vans a little bit. MTA Chair Jano Lieber, you write, has called on the city to get them off the streets for years. And some commuter vans, as I understand, like you said, are licensed with the Taxi and Limousine Commission, but most dollar vans are not technically legal. So to your point before, do you think Mayor Mamdani is going to begin to crack down on them?
I mean, if I was going to play pundit for a minute, I would say probably not. I can't picture the mayor cracking down on an immigrant community that relies on this. But you never know. I mean, the city says they're very serious about making buses faster. This is a top priority and goal, but I think the way they're going to do it is to redesign the streets so that no vehicle can block a bus. And we didn't mention it, but there's like a few other like very interesting technical things they're going to do to speed up the buses in these neighborhoods. And for example, one thing they're going to do is like change the stoplight so that when a bus comes close to it, it'll go from red to green automatically. They're going to do other things such as, having the separate traffic light just for buses. They actually call them queue jump signals. And so when the bus comes closer, it'll allow it to go. You may have seen these. It's sort of like a white strip near the stoplights, and they have it in some neighborhoods. So they're going to add more of these. So, there's these sort of little things they can do to make the buses go a little bit faster. And I think the goal is just to make buses like the most desirable way to get around the city.
We've got a call from Assemblymember Farah Souffrant-Forrest from Brooklyn. Assemblymember, hi, welcome to the show.
Sarah Fawcett.
Oh, sorry. I think that we've got to get the Assemblymember ready to go. Do we have them ready? Hi, Assemblymember, welcome to the show.
Hi, so glad to be on.
Hi, welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my comment comes from both as someone who's lived all my life in Brooklyn, used the dollar van. I used to be an Uber driver and a dollar cab driver for a short time. I have to say that the community relies on the dollar vans to get you where you need to go, especially after hours, after peak hours when the B41 or let's just say the B46 is just not available. So whatever solutions we come up with, I hope that it does allow a space for commuter vans to continue to serve the community.
Thank you, Assemblymember Farah Forrest, for calling in with that. And I guess my question there is clearly it's filling in a need, Stephen. So could you see a day where dollar vans become an official part of the transit system?
Interesting. I have not ever heard about that, although I guess ideally, yeah, for the TLC, they want these vehicles to be official and licensed. But like the assembly member was saying, like the attraction of it is that you just put your hand out and it takes you where you want to go at all hours, right? And it's cheaper than an Uber or a Lyft. And it's true, the B41, the frequency will definitely go down late at night. I mean, I think frequency of dollar vans may also go down late at night. It's just based on demand. But yeah, I mean, the city would love for everyone to be officially licensed for sure. Yeah. But that might take away from the charm and the functionality of it.
Yeah, and typically it does cost about $2 to go on one of those vans. Let's turn to the 1, 2, 3 lines, because I think this is more of a PSA, but I think it's quite important, and I want to make sure we get it before we run out of time. You write, New Yorkers who rely on the 1, 2, and 3 subway lines should brace for major disruptions over the next 5 weekends. So what should they expect? Why the disruption?
Well, the disruptions, it's really interesting. Like the MTA does a lot of construction work on nights and weekends to add things like new signals or elevators or things like that. But this is really just sort of the daily maintenance of the system. They're just fixing, the tracks so that when the trains switch between local and express, the switches are in good working order. So the switches basically need a tune-up, and it's kind of disruptive to do it during the day, of course. So sure. They're doing, obviously. So they're doing nights and weekends. They say the summer there's fewer riders, but that does mean fewer trains going downtown, especially on the weekends. It's not going to, I think, we'll have to check the exact lines, but, below 14th Street, you're basically not going to get much on those lines. But, downtown Manhattan is served with several lines. I should also add that work does go on weeknights as well after 9:30 p.m. typically.
So people who maybe live in Brooklyn, ending late at night in Manhattan, might have to think of something.
That's right. That's right. But there is the 4 and the 5 also that will be going out to Brooklyn, so folks will have some options.
So you've got another story about one of the stations on that line, Borough Hall. Back in 2018, a section of the ceiling of that station collapsed and hit a commuter. That set in motion a 5-year renovation of the downtown Brooklyn subway station. What was the extent of the renovation?
Oh, it was massive. They did a massive gut renovation. The ceiling for sure. If you look at it now, it's been replaced. There's this long beam that spans the length of the station. They replaced the entire beam, and that really abuts Brooklyn Borough Hall right there. So they had to be careful there. In addition, they really flood-proofed the station. We know, we've got rain coming today potentially. The rainstorms have gotten more and more intense, and that's one of those stations where you used to see waterfalls and massive amounts of flooding. So they really went above and beyond, they said, to flood-proof it, to waterproof the walls. And one of the interesting things you'll notice on the street right in front of it, Joralemon, the curb is really high. It's almost like the road is a trench,
Yeah.
so that the water doesn't rise above the curb and pour into the station as it does, as it used to do. So they did those changes, and I think 3 elevators is really the biggest one. It's a fully accessible station now, and the MTA is really on just a rampage in a good way of installing elevators and making stations more accessible. They say more than half of the subway will be accessible in the coming years, which is just a sea change from the previous era of the MTA. Yeah. So that's all at Borough Hall. There's also they replaced some of the mosaics, did upgrades to that. It's funny, I went to talk to riders. I was like, what do you think? They're like, yeah, it just looks like a station. Because it's not a radical redesign. It's more like new tiles. Everything's a little shinier. The lights are a little brighter. But, for riders, they're just all right, let's just get on the train. But, take a second, pause, look above, notice that, the paint is fresh and the tiles are new on the ground. And so I think, it was a lot of work, several millions of dollars.
I think it's important to bring that up. When you're traveling to work, it's so easy to just forget about what's right in front of you. For me, at least, I should take a next time I'm in
Put the
Borough
phone
Hall
down.
Yeah, exactly.
Examine the nice subway tiles.
Speaking of phones, we're getting a lot of texts. I just want to point out to listeners about pushback against the dollar vans. So I want to go back to touch on that, make sure that is being recognized. Here's one text that says, really, no pushback on dollar vans at all, just that they're charming. Come on. I also have Matt in Brooklyn, who I think has something to say about it. Matt, hey, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi. Yeah, if the bus lane change gets rid of dollar vans, it'll be a good thing. It'll also be the only good thing. The bus lane change seems like complete nonsense to me, I live a few blocks away. But the dollar vans are total menaces. They said out-of-state license plates. I would say at least a quarter just have no license plates at all. I've had a hit and run from one. When I called the police, they said, what's the license plate number? I said, there isn't one. They didn't believe me. I had a different hit and run from a different one that had out-of-state plates. The entire business model seems to be, we can get away with doing all the illegal and dangerous stuff, and the people we're competing against don't, and that seems like a bad business model.
Matt, thanks so much for that call. Stephen, we're hearing some pretty intense feelings on both sides, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, getting hit that's awful. I'm sorry for that happened. That's brutal. And yeah, I mean, that does point to the problem. That's one of the biggest complaints the TLC has, is that these are not safe. These vehicles don't have insurance. Often the seatbelts are inadequate. They're not inspected the way, a TLC vehicle would be inspected. I mean, I've been out there. I've definitely seen cops pulling these vehicles over. It's not that there's zero enforcement, but, to the caller's point, I think there's a little bit of a blind eye to this. But to the assembly member's point, a lot of folks appreciate and rely on them. So it's a mixed bag, but the safety issue is real, and I've definitely heard a lot of complaints about that.
And Matt, thank you so much for calling in and to share that, and for all of you for sharing your thoughts right now. We're running out of time. I want to talk about the World Cup, if I could, just a little bit.
Sure.
A lot of us are still adapting to daily life without having the World Cup to tune into. Before tourists from all around the world descended upon New York and New Jersey to see their favorite teams play at MetLife, there were concerns that the local transit systems couldn't adequately serve so many people. Ultimately, how did the transit do?
It did really well, especially considering NJ Transit's history of major sporting events. I'm thinking about the Super Bowl back in, I think it's 2018, was just a complete disaster with people lined up. They couldn't get on their train. The platforms were dangerously overcrowded. They took that really seriously and really studied how to make it better, what needs to be done. And ultimately, what needed to be done was just make it extremely inconvenient for regular riders, basically shut down the line for anyone that's not going to the Meadowlands. And that they pulled it off, and it worked. They say they did basically 8 Super Bowls worth of commuters for all these matches.
Wow.
But, it also changed the equation that tickets were like $98. Mm-hmm. It's pretty pricey. So, and a shuttle bus ticket was, in $28 or something. So I think a lot of folks, those tickets typically almost sold out, whereas NJ Transit reported that they could have handled 40,000 train riders for each game. They didn't get anywhere close to that. Something more like 22,000 to 26,000 per match. But, that said, it worked out well. They had a plan in place. There was an after report that I read that was super interesting that basically said, they got a way more drivers than they expected, particularly people getting dropped off at the American Dream. And they sort of came to the conclusion that folks just like to drive to these matches.
I see.
They don't want to take transit. Not to say that 26,000 people is nothing. That was a lot for NJ Transit to handle. And they got them out within like record time, like 60 to 80 minutes on average. Everyone's out. So they did exceptionally well, no doubt. But the reduced numbers also, I think, helped.
I see. We'll have to leave it there for now with Stephen Nessen, transportation reporter for the WNYC and Gothamist newsroom. Stephen, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.